So instead of making a stupid April Fool's video about something that no one cares about, let's do something that's real, like the Docker containers that I use. Now, I do run Unraid on it, so don't click off yet, but this Docker container stuff also applies to others that are maybe running Docker Compose. It just runs a little differently, but the same thing at the end of the day, what you're trying to get, the goal is pretty much the same, right? So let's jump into it. Oh, and one last thing. These aren't Dockers. These are Docker containers we're going to be going over. It's a big difference. I have one Docker on my box. So you've seen some of the previous videos. I did that new build. I am currently using a Core i7-14700K or 14K, however you want to say it. It's a decent processor. Had to go new because I haven't built a new box in several years, so it was that time. I am running, if I have to remember here, 64 gig of RAM. Definitely probably overkill, but why not? Quick run over the drives. You can see, do like one particular brand of drives here at Western Digital. A lot of them are shuck drives, some of them are reds, just depends on whatever was on sale because I can't afford to buy a bunch of drives at one time. I started out with Unraid on like 3 6 terabyte drives and I've grown this same array since, way back. And I just changed out the USB stick because we were talking on Discord and someone said theirs died. And I was like, it's been probably a good 5-6 years or more since I've swapped mine out. So I went ahead and did that. Switched out to a Samsung bar, really like those. Now, what I'm running a SSD, I think a 500 gig for my cache, like app data stuff. Here's the flash drive. I just swapped that. I had a little, I think it was 64 is like the smallest you can get now in the bars. I also have, this was kind of a holdover. I used to have I called it my junker drive. I just had a junker SSD. And now this is a NVMe drive, but I just throw a bunch of stuff over there. It's just do whatever. It's like a temp drive for like anything that downloads and swaps around, and I can tear that drive up. There's not a lot of things on there I care about if it dies. So I just do a lot of, temporary stuff on it. Now, one thing I wanted to get into before we get into the Docker containers is this setting right here in the global share setting. If you haven't messed with it, it's to permit exclusive shares. I think that came in 6. I have to go back and look. If someone knows, let me know. It's like 6.8 or something, maybe 6.9. It's pretty damn cool if you meet the parameters to do exclusive shares. And basically, from what I found is I changed my app data folder where it doesn't go over to allowing it to go to the array when it expands too far, which is fine. And then once you do where you make it exclusive to one, if you go into your shares and you'll notice they get this little, the little play button looking thing on here. So now you can see my domains has that, my app data has that, and my system has that based on I just have them sitting on just the cache. And I will tell you the performance difference because you're bypassing Fuse in Unraid is absolutely nuts, especially on an NVMe drive. I don't even use the RAM cache on like ESP home stuff because it's just as fast. So definitely check that out. Check out that feature. As always, before you start jacking around with things, come in here. I know not a lot of people do it. Is click on flash and then hit the flash backup button and save it to whatever you're on. Keep a copy. It saves all your settings, everything, because if the USB dies for some reason, like I was just talking about, you can definitely save it and keep a copy and just do a restore. It's not hard to do. So now enough talking and into the Docker containers. So let's go ahead and zoom in for people that are on mobile. Okay, that's not too bad. So I don't need to see all the CPU memory stuff and everything. So rundown of things. I use Unraid for just about everything: smart home automation, our Plex media server. And no, I'm not going to get into all the documentaries that we know and love on our Plex server, but I'll show you all the services. And what you do with it is all your thing, and all your risk or whatever it may be. You do what you want with that stuff. So I run Mosquito. Now, this is for MQTT. There was an issue that we talked about in Discord and everything. I thought it was cool. Tinkerer told us about it. And I locked mine to 2015 because I had an issue where a lot of the retains packets were not getting into Home Assistant during Home Assistant restarts. And so I would come up with like Zigbee to MQT stuff that would show unavailable, and then I have to restart Zigbee to MQTT. If you're not familiar on how to lock your particular, version, this is one of the awesome features about Unraid Docker container stuff, because you just click in here and say, hey, I want to hit edit. And scroll down. If you look at repository, and here's the repository, and then you can put the tag on the end. Now, if you don't know the tag, if you click here, usually, depending on the setup of the container, it will take you to the Docker Hub or the GHRCIO, I think it is. And if you hit on tags, you can scroll down and find the exact tag that you want. And make sure it's a tag that fits like AMD64. Don't try to put other ones on there. I don't know if it allows it or not. But then you can see, here's that tag 2015. And so then once I was in here, and you just put :2015, the exact tag. And that's it. Hit apply. It keeps all your settings and everything. And you hit done. It'll pull down the older version and lock you at that version of that Docker container, and it stays in there. So I guess in some of the settings of MQTT, do make sure that you are doing, especially if you're in the Home Assistant world or whatever you're using MQTT for, you want to have persistent data. So, and make sure it is, valid, that you are doing persistent data on things. And what that means is you'll save all your configs. Trust me, if you don't have persistent data, you'll find out on next reboot and say, well, what happened to all my stuff? It's all screwed up, and you'll have to reboot a bunch of stuff. Yeah, just make sure your persistent data works. And how can you see if that works? We're going to browse over to Mount User Data, Mosquito Data, and I can see I have a file, and you can see this is 331.815, and I know that it has some, 1.4 megabytes, which is fine, and I'm saving to it, so we're good to go there. So this is that MongoDB. If you use the LSIO, the Linux server, which I do highly recommend using Linux servers, containers for a lot of things. It's not just one guy making things to keep up with, it's a whole group. So definitely get more updates and longevity out of things. The cool thing is with this, I locked it to version 5. Now the thing is with that is with 5 is, say they're at 7 here, is the way they work is that they, depending on if the person sets up the repository like this, and of course, I'm going to have to dig. You see here, they have 7. So if you just set it at 7 and there happened to be a new version, well, in my case, I'm using 5, but there happens to be like a bug fix that they backport into version 5, then it would pop up and show you that, hey, there's a new update for version 5, but it's always going to keep me in the realm of 5. I like how some of the repos do that. Faster Whisper, that's for dealing with some of the voice things I do in Home Assistant. And I believe I'm using, you can see LS, that's the Linux server. I'm using that one. I was using a little container for that that I just found, but then I saw Linux server had that, so I jumped over to using theirs. Same thing for Piper. That's also for the voice assistant stuff in Home Assistant. That does not work that great. No, nothing to do with these containers. But yeah, that's the Piper stuff there. I don't think there's any like special config to those. No, it's just the ports and the voice and stuff. I pretty much left it default there. So, Open Wakeword is another one I did find and found out on the Raspberries stuff. I think I did dump this into the templates on the App Store in Unraid. Yeah, and I did dump this one into the app store of Unraid under my templates because I didn't see anybody else had them. And so that's also for the wake word for like ESP home devices in Home Assistant. Again, the voice assistant stuff. Matter server, that's another one I did that was points to the official Python Matter server for Home Assistant. I know some people run HAOS and have all this in there. I don't. I don't like to run HAOS on my production stuff because I like to control all of the Docker containers. Prime example, we just went over the MQTT one, is I saw in the thread that they were like, well, I can't control the version. I run HAOS. Well, that sucks. I can. So I just changed the thing, and then it was like a really technically like a 15-second fix. It was that stupid simple. So that's one of the advantages. There are many other disadvantages, but they're of running your own containers and not running HAOS. Libra Speed, that is, I use that sometimes just doing internal speed tests, like, checking out Wi-Fi and everything. I used to have that going through Swag, but there's some issues with that. I just don't do it right now. I don't really need to do it. So, but I normally just checking some internal speed tests. Overseer, that is one of the, as you say, R's, and it allows you to expose things out through Swag and see all the cool things and do cool requests for your media, which we're not going to go into. We're going to skip right along. Plex, everybody knows what Plex is. Awesome, cool little media server deal that you can serve up all of your bought stuff that you have, all your TV shows and movies to all of your TVs and then your phones out on the interwebs. No special setup to that one that I know of. I guess we can talk a little bit about some of the setup of some of my folders. I'll talk about some of that and some of the different ways. So yeah, I just have it running to Plex Media folder. I'm using the latest one. Oh, this is I do use this. I do go in here and since I have enough RAM and I want to transcode RAM, and I added a folder called transcode, and this is simply as this. It's the name transcode and then the container path, which is what's going to be inside the container. It's called /transcode. The host path I have going to dev shim plex tr. And what the dev shim is, it only allows up to half of your RAM. If for some reason, which I had this happen, is if you run it to like /temp, that lets it use all the RAM in Unraid. And if it could easily blow out all of your RAM and cause some other issues. So I use this /dev shim for Plex transcodes. So it all depends on your amount of RAM though. Then inside Plex itself, you need to tell it to use the actual /transcode. And that way you can transcode to RAM, save your NVMe drives and SSDs or whatever that way, because it's just transcoding video and then it should just fall off when it's done, right? You don't need it. MariaDB, I use that for Home Assistant instead of using was it MySQL or is it SQLite or something like that, the built-in one. So I run some pretty big databases. I have a beefy machine, so why not use a little bit beefier SQL database deal for Home Assistant. And Dazzle is a pretty slick one. I don't use it all the time. So, but if you install Dazzle and you come in here, if you want to easily go look at some of the logs to some of your containers, it's pretty simple. And I know there's other ways to do that inside of Unraid itself, but hey, I want to look in here. I'll look at Frigate. I want to see all the good fun errors that my front bell is producing for some reason. So I think that was due to Wi-Fi reboot, I think is what was happening there. So, but it allows it to auto scroll on things, and it's a pretty cool little thing if you don't know what Dazzle is, especially if you're looking at the logs. It's pretty neat. Of course, you can click on the logs of the container, and it pulls up that in a separate window, but how much fun is that, right? Especially when you want to dig through a bunch of stuff. InfluxDB, I locked that to 183. That's just the database for doing a lot of graphs and everything for like sensors and things that for Grafana. And I'll show you in Grafana. There's no web interface to this at all. Hot Deals bot is for my Discord stuff that posts hot deals. Z-Wave JS. I do have a little bit of Z-Wave. Look how much. I've got oh, we got to have an update. I've got a Zeus 800 stick. I got a 4-in-1 sensor, and these two are, I think, dead, I believe. I don't have these plugged in. So don't have much Z-Wave. It's kind of expensive, and I haven't really had good luck with Z-Wave. So, but I run it just to keep things to see, kind of stay up with how Z-Wave is doing. Weather flow to MQTT. There's no web interface to that. It just picks up from the Tempest weather flow. What is a Tempest weather flow? It's this little thing I talked about, did a review video on. It's pretty cool. It's a just weather station for outside, and you really just put it on a pole and hook up the little hub, and that's it. There's no moving parts to it, and it works pretty damn well. They are kind of pricey, but they work well. Now, I prefer to keep my data local for pulling things. So Weatherflow to MQTT actually takes all that weather data, puts it in MQTT, and then we can pick it up in Home Assistant. Now, there is a built-in integration now with Home Assistant, so I haven't looked into dropping it because it just works. Amcrest to MQTT, that's another one that I did lock that to 1015. I don't remember. I wish they would have a thing that you could add notes out here. Like, why did you do this? I don't remember. That was one for like the doorbells and stuff to drop different events to MQTT. Of course, the big one, Home Assistant. Home Assistant, really way back in the day, I don't know, it was like version 0.31 or something. I accidentally was just going through in the apps and going through here in Unraid and just picking through and looking for stuff. And I said, oh, what's this Home Assistant thing? And I picked it, and I was running Smart Things at the time. And I was like, oh, damn, this is pretty slick. There was no onboarding at that time, so it just popped in this dashboard, started finding stuff. Like it found like all my Rokus, my Google Home speakers and everything. And then I was blown away. I could actually just type messages and, do noise, text to speech on the actual Google things around the house without installing any other thing. I'd been trying to do that for like days and days with Smart Things, but I just couldn't find anything that was really solid and easy to do. And this did it. So then that's what led me into I'm dumping Smart Things, and I dumped everything in the Home Assistant, and it's been a good journey ever since. Oh, and there's no like special setup to that at all. Like there's nothing to it. I just have it going to a config folder for Home Assistant. There's nothing to it. I think, yeah, and it does use the 8123, but I'll get to it something else later. ESP Home is, I know if that's you've messed around all the little ESP chips and everything, the little web GUI. This is ESP Home, and it manages, and I do everything with that outside of Home Assistant for all of that. Now, there's no special thing to have to connect them or anything like that to like Home Assistant, ESP Home, because once you flash the firmware or send it over to your different devices, Home Assistant's going to pick it up, or MQTT is. Node-RED. Node-RED is the bread and butter. I don't do a whole lot of home automation stuff inside Home Assistant. I know that sounds funny, but I don't like the automation stuff in there. I know they've done a lot of work on it since I started with it, but that's the problem. I started way back on it, and it sucked. You really had to do a lot of stuff in YAML, and I didn't really feel like I wanted to learn all that crap. So then I found Node-RED, and I'm like, hey, I can just draw some bubbles around and drag stuff. I know this one's probably kind of messy, but it's way zoomed in. But I could just draw bubbles and do flows and everything, and I could see exactly without having to worry about, did I indent something? Did I have a hidden tab anywhere, or space, or some crap like that? So that's where I fell in love with Node-RED, and I do probably 99% of my automations inside of Node-RED. Now, there is one thing you do need to connect. You do need to go into Home Assistant and you have to enable a long-term token, and then you put that token into Node-RED, and that's about it. Vinstar to MQTT. Love this one. is It has a lot of different data for my Vinstar, that I guess the AC and heater thermostat. I really love those things, except they're damn expensive. Yeah, you can see still. Yeah, it's come down a lot, but you can see it's for this 7850. I think I have a 7800 or something. It looks kind of like this. It's a purely local thermostat, which is not normal in this day. It has Wi-Fi. Make sure if you do get one of these, it has built-in Wi-Fi. Don't say Wi-Fi ready. It will basically go through, and when you put it on your Wi-Fi, you don't have to set up an account. You don't even have to put it in the cloud. It has a local HTTP API, which is pretty damn slick. And it do have a Home Assistant integration, but I prefer to get some of the data out through MQTT when I'm using it with Node-RED. Grafana is just, in a nutshell, it's badass. The graphs are actually nice looking, and I really wish the graphs were this easy to use inside of Home Assistant, because if like you want to pull up one of these graphs and go, okay, what happened over here? You can just click and drag, and it zooms in right into that area, and all of these stay the same. Hey, I want to look in and see what was going on right here. Oh, look, okay, that was something running in the attic at 7 amps. And you can see everything. And I have this really zoomed in, and I don't run a lot of crazy dashboard stuff with Grafana. I know some people do, but there's some really beautiful dashboards. I like them just for the easy to use graphs. But there's a little more work for it, because you got to tell Home Assistant to drop the data out to Influx, and then you got to build your stuff in Grafana. But it's well worth it if you dig into Grafana. Nginx. I only use that for some stuff that when it gets stupid, whenever I need to do a local web server, I don't have this outside the internet stuff. I don't expose it anywhere. I used it for like when I'm doing like upgrades for like my own firmware for like Tasmota devices. I'll just put the firmware on them and I hit this local, URL and pull my firmware that way. Pretty much what I use it for. There's been some other little minor stuff, but nothing crazy. Smoke ping. Smoke ping is pretty cool. Of course, you'll see the trend. See Linux server. Smoke ping, you can see some of the stuff here is, you can go through and see all the stuff with your connection and everything. I just have it going to a few random different places. And you can look through and see the 3 hours, the 30 hours, and then you can click, just like I was talking about, hey, I want to see this 30-hour deal, and then I can drag and zoom in to see something that was going on there. So yeah, you can see right here, I want to see what was going on. Hey, there's a little thing going on there, whatever. And that's pretty much the thing I use Smoke Ping for. Tasmo Backup. This is like an awesome one for Tasmota. It goes through and it will back up all of your Tasmota devices, but it's also more than that. It's the list of everything. So if I want to jump into, because I don't remember what the bulb couch lamp is. I know where it's at, but I don't remember what IP it is or whatever. I just go through, hey, through here. If I want to go straight to it, I can hit CS, so that goes to the console. But if I just want to go straight to there, boom, and now I'm at bulb couch lamp. I can search stuff. I can see when they're backed up. I can see when they last backed up. Hey, I had these. I know why. I saw this. I had an issue going on with this one, but I know these two are gone now. I don't know why I got a duplicate. I've gotten rid of that. So in this one, I have it unplugged. So I know why they're red and not being backed up. So pretty cool there where you can use Tasmo Backup. It's a very simple app to install. I don't think there's any crazy settings to use other than the database and the port and stuff. Nothing crazy there. Telegraph. I don't remember why I had this one. I think I had it for Previous dashboard inside of Grafana, but I haven't gone back in there to go see why, so I haven't disabled it. I think it was at times also I was pulling stuff and I had my edge router and a telegraph was like could scoop all kind of stuff, but I haven't done a whole lot with it. So probably could get rid of that one. Swag. I know the Linux server one. Swag in a nutshell basically allows you to, is I guess you would say reverse proxy, and allows you to expose some of your stuff out on the interwebs using HTTPS. It's kind of a crazy little setup of things, but it's nothing too bad. But you just got to go through and enable what services you want because it's all based on what you have and what you want to expose. Yeah. So Taituli is basically just it works with Plex and shows you what's being streamed at that time off of your Plex. And then you can do a bunch of little alerts and stuff like that when you get like new media and things. I've set that up years ago and I don't really use it a whole lot anymore. This is the one I use the BinHex ones. This is SAB NZBD for downloading all your good, public domain, documentaries. Now, what I do is I talked about earlier is the way I use this to download data is I actually have it going to that trash disk. I call it the Evo 9 Plus or whatever. And I have it going over there. And that way I'm not filling up my cache drive where my app data is at or anything. And then I dump it all over there. So it downloads everything over there. And then when it goes to uncompress it, I have it uncompressed to Plex Media and I have it in a temp folder. Now, the way I have Plex Media set is I actually have it set as the array only, no cache. So then what happens is if you can picture this in your mind, it's very simple, is you've got one drive with your NVMe and you got your array. So you're forcing it to read the extract and write to the array. Otherwise, it would move everything to the array and then you try to unextract on the array and it gets slow as dog piss Jones. Just don't. If you have a drive to do that and dump all that temporary data for your NZBs and then force it to have to use those two devices, it's so much faster and more efficient. Now, if you even have a bigger NVMe to use, you could use two NVMEs, but I just don't. And I could transfer the data and then get it moved off of there in the array. But for the most part, it's fairly quick in this aspect. Maybe it's something I might look at later because I have more NVMe slots. Maybe I can buy a cheap NVMe. Plex Media is set to just array. It does not use the cache and when you go in there. So I love how they've made this a lot easier to see on all your shares for like, is it going to go to the cache? And then would you go to the array when it gets moved? Or what if it uses the array? Well, you want to move it back to the cache, etc. So I love how they've done that in the newer versions. Got a lot of containers going on here. So kind of the same thing in, these are sonar, there's another R, and then same thing for radar is they just tie into SAB NZB and tell it what to download. And that's all there is to it. That's all we're going to show about those. If you know what they are, you go ahead and set them up and use them. HDD temp, I used that for a plugin that was, I think I used that in Telegraph, but I don't know if I still have that. Yeah, see, I don't even have that thing anymore. So I probably don't need Telegraph and don't even need HDD temp anymore. Unified network application. I know a lot of people running UniFi access points. I run 3 UniFi access points and 3 or 4 of their switches now. Begrudgingly switched to their switches, if you want to say it that way. But that's due to I ran into a deal I had and I could not pass it up. I do like it's easy to just change your VLAN stuff in one spot. So that's the app, like if you would use the key or whatever. So that's the app for like managing all of your devices and everything for your different access points. And then I do like being able to see a lot of the different devices and pull up the IP addresses. And I know this is really wide, but I've got it zoomed in so it looks like trash, but it's very useful to be able to see stuff. And there's some features I can't use in here because I don't use their router, which I don't really like their routers at all. I use OpenSense on a little N100 box for that. There's more things there I like in the OpenSense stuff. And yeah, so you don't really need their router for being able to use this whole thing. You just miss out on some, I wouldn't say miss out, some of the features you don't need in here. Now, Frigate, yeah, you may not know that one. This is a software NVR with object detection. So pretty cool that you have this. This is free software. So if you want to come in here and say, hey, I want to look at the events on the driveway north, and this is a Daiwa camera, you can see that the wonderful dog and saw it was a dog. So if we go to, I don't think I have clips enabled on that one. I guess I don't for the dogs, which makes sense. I didn't care less about a dog going through. So I do have the clips enabled for people. So yeah, so it picks up all the different people and everything. And so yeah, all the different little things if you want to go see all the people and whatever. Now, I know probably some of you are probably asking, well, don't you use Blue Iris? Well, I use Blue Iris and I actually use Frigate. I kind of like them both. There's stuff in Frigate that don't have in Blue Iris. It's easy to set up some different things like the detections. Blue Iris, I like being able to pipe the HDMI output to that computer straight to my HDMI matrix switch and pipe it around the house. Yeah, maybe we'll get to that in another video as well, where if I ever can finish the last TV, that's a whole different thing. But I pipe it in, I can watch Blue Iris anywhere in the house, and it has all my cameras on it. I don't have an easy way to do that with Frigate for the HDMI out without jumping through a bunch of hoops. So that's where I really want to stay in the whole Blue Iris stuff. Almost to the end here. Crash Plan Pro. This is a paid thing, and I do have my backups of a lot of stuff in here. I've got, looks like almost 6 terabytes. I think it's like $10, $15 a month. And it's kind of slow to upload, even though I had gigabit upload. But hey, for the most part, it works. I have been able to pull files down at version stuff and everything. So I got about 6 terabytes of data backed up here. It's just one of my backups that I use. I also have some other backups that I do manually from time to time, just on a local box. But this one's fully automated. Zigbee to MQTT. Yep. That is all of my Zigbee devices and everything. It dumps everything into Home Assistant. I do actually use it also direct in Node-RED, so it kind of skips HA. Just I've had some issues with different things, so I like to go direct from Node-RED to Zigbee to MQTT. But I do both. It just depends on whatever's easiest. So I'm using this with a CC2652, the Texas Instrument. Still don't recommend using the Scilab's EFR chipsets with this. Tend to be some issues when you get larger networks. Got almost 50 devices in here. All the blinds I really love still to this day. Having all the blinds and everything right in here and do all the automations, and that's really changed things in our home. I have some other ones with smart wings as well. Yeah, you can see there's a few more there. Been really happy, and never thought I would say this, but I've been really happy with how reliable Zigbee has been, especially with the combination of Zigbee to MQTT and its CC2652. Been stupid reliable to do things with. Then we lead on to the Scilab's multi-pan container. I'll probably put a template up there unless somebody beats me to it, which is totally fine. Or I can talk the Linux server guys into doing that. But this is the one that's also in HAOS, but it's using that EFR that's in the SkyConnect USB. And I have one device in here that is Thread. And I can't show it yet. Maybe next week I can show that device, do the embargo on it. But it seems to work okay. But am I jumping to go get a bunch of Thread devices? Hell no. OpenAPR, this is that LPR stuff, my plate minder. I don't think there's there is a web interface, but I don't have it turned on. I dump straight into Home Assistant. So it dumps straight into here as JPEGs. And it's okay. There's some like code project AI stuff. I do like the JPEGs. I find I can search some of the JPEGs, but you can see it didn't it saw it as 830, which is way off for what it is, I guess, due to the angle, and it's just getting dark. So it saw it as it, but you can actually read it. And I do record this LPR. This is about 150 feet. Probably the front of the vehicle is about 150 feet from me. And let's see if I can find a. So you can. It did pick up this one, right? But basically, that's just a little free program. There's no cost to it. There are some better paid ones. I tell you that out there. I've tried them, but they're too expensive for what I need. And this is about 150 feet, the front of the vehicle here, that picks up this, LPR stuff. And I did like the stuff at night. So at night, even with stuff flying by, and I know the camera is not very useful, but I have other cameras for that. But you can actually see, you could make that out as being a Texas plate as RPZ 4535. So it becomes useful if necessary. Handbrake MP4, Handbrake MKV. These are just two versions of the same container. I have two folders. I drop in some MP4s or MKVs that I need to compress and use the GPU on the Unraid box instead of my, personal computer, and I can just let it run. And this just automatically compresses stuff to H.265 and drops them in another folder. Pretty cool there. iPerf 3, that's just for doing internal tests. So I don't know, Sagat. This is for like finding like large files and duplicate files. I don't have it running all the time. SFTP Go. Just when I want to run some SFTP outside of the network, I don't have it running all the time. It's just like a friend needs a file, whatever, I'll fire it up and let them pull that file. Home Assistant Dev. Oh, what the hell? How are you running another Home Assistant? Well, this is the beta one, and I'll change the tag from time to time. But the key is, and in the config for that different Home Assistant, I have it going to a different folder, is I run it like on port 9123. I do a different MQTT server at times. I may even do a different Zigbee. It just depends on what I'm doing. If I want to test something or whatever, and I don't feel like doing the whole HAOS thing. PlateMinder Web. I'm not using the web interface. That's that PlateMinder LPR stuff. Syslog NG. That was like Tasmota stuff when I'm just logging some things. I don't really use it for anything. And then Shotcut for playing around editing some videos. Actually, like inside of Unraid to try to use the CPU, but not using it too much. TICC, this is an orphaned image, and this was something else. I forgot the Python 3, but I leave those here because I use them from time to time, like using like Docker run commands to run things actually on Unraid. Like if I want to upgrade the firmware on my coordinator for Zigbee, I use this TICC tool. It's a cool little Docker container. That way you don't have to go and unplug the coordinator from your server, and you can be lazy like me and just upgrade it in place. Just make sure you stop Zigbee to MQTT first. So that's pretty much it on VMs. I don't run any VMs really. This is just Home Assistant, and this is actually Windows 10 now. I've had it as licensed when they were doing like the free license thing for upgrades, and and if I needed to test something or whatever and sandbox something, then I'll just make a copy and then do whatever, and then I'll just overwrite that copy and blow things away and put it back like it was. It's pretty easy instead of having to fire up a whole physical box to try out some bootleg potential software. That's pretty much it. If you're not familiar with installing Docker containers, it's fairly stupid simple. You just pick on the stuff and hit install, and then it goes through and hey, you walk through all the little instructions of everything. And a lot of the people who make these container setups make it easy for idiots like me and just walk through things and just read things. And there are links to different, like threads and everything. It's really one of the shining things I really love about Unraid is the Docker container stuff. So that'll about do it for this long ass video of all of my Docker containers. I never realized I had that many. There's some other Docker containers that you really love and would love to share. shoot me a comment down below, and I would love to check those out. I've just will install pretty much whatever I think may be useful because I got tons of horsepower and space and everything. So why not if it comes out to being something really good? I do appreciate all the Patreon members, YouTube members. Definitely couldn't do it without you. And yep, y'all know the drill. Press all them buttons, and y'all take care.